All right, welcome back in, everybody. Appreciate you hanging out with us as it is game week. Yes, it is. Eagles, Patriots, Sunday, 425 at Foxborough. That's Derek Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis hanging with you. Haven't had the opportunity to talk to our next guest in a bit. It's always fun having him on the show. Does an awesome job covering the Birds for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Also, I would suggest everybody listen to his podcast, Uncovering the Birds. It's absolutely awesome. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_McLane. What's going on, Jeff? How are you?
Rob,
what's up, man? How you doing today? Good.
Jeff, we're good, man. This is a little calm before the storm, my friend. This is, I guess, the last off day, and then they're back at it tomorrow in preparation for the game here. Let me ask you. We were talking about the Matt Patricia thing a little bit earlier. Is that just a media sort of creation that there could be a real advantage here with debriefing him, if you will, or whatever, for this game in particular? Or do you think it could be a more of an impactful storyline?
I mean, I think he certainly can kind of give him a little bit of an idea of some of the scheme stuff that Bill does. But I mean, I'm speaking Bill O'Brien, specifically because he's now returned as the offensive coordinator, and there's probably a little bit of an unknown there, and just the fact that he. That he hasn't been the offensive coordinator for the Patriots in a long time. So, and there's not a lot of film, and I guess, and that can kind of give him a little bit of an idea. I mean, Bill Belichick's defense is kind of, the great thing about his defense is it's undefinable in a lot of ways. It's very much dependent upon who they're facing. But I'm sure there's certain things that he can give in terms of the defense as well. But I see, we all know Matt Patricia was defensive coordinator, primarily was the one that the Eagles faced in the Super Bowl, but he was the offensive coordinator last year with not very good results, and which is why Bill O'Brien's back in there. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a factor. I don't think it's a big factor. I don't think it's that much of a factor when it comes down to it.
Hey, Jeff, during his conference today, Nick Sirianni was very coy about who's starting at certain positions. You surprised by that?
No, I mean, that's kind of been Nick's thing. And most coaches' things. Why give this information when you don't have to? My opinion on that is, I don't think it really matters if the Patriots know that, Justin Evans or Terrell Edmonds or Sidney Brown is the starting safety opposite Reed Blankenship. Although I'm not really sure it's going to be one guy. I think it could be matchup based. Rotating in and out, depending upon the personnel package. I mean, there will certainly be a third safety in some sort of big nickel and dime situation. So, you could see all three of them out there on the field at some point. I mean, they know the personnel. I think the bigger unknown is the scheme, right? I mean, Sean Desai has 1 year under his belt that you can look at the film with the Bears 2 years ago, and we know he comes from the Vic Fangio school of defense. We know what that entails. We know that you're going to see a little more zone than man, probably a fair amount of zone more than man. A lot of two high safety looks, or at least pre-snap looks with two safeties, but also a lot of two high safety coverages. You're going to have multiple fronts. You're going to ask a lot of your linebackers in terms of route responsibilities. So, I mean, we have a general idea, but to me, that's the great unknown here with this Eagles team this season is what is Sean Desai going to do? How he's, is he going to bring more pressures? Is he going to blitz more? Jonathan Gannon, in the past, he was kind of more, in this 1 year, was kind of on the lower end of that. And that's generally Fangio does blitz, but doesn't blitz a lot. But his philosophy is very much in line with what Gannon was like in terms of not only Vic Fangio, but also don't give up the explosive play, keep things in front of you. Now, I don't think with this team that they're facing that they have to do that as much. I don't think Mac Jones really scares you. Offensively, they don't really scare you. That defensive front, that offensive line is bruised and battered. I don't think they even know who's going to be at right tackle for this game. And that certainly plays to the Eagles' advantage here on Sunday.
Jeff, of the let's stay on the defensive side here, of the unknown / young guys, be it Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Reed Blankenship. Which of those guys do you think will have the biggest impact this season?
Impact or be the most important? I mean, you mentioned, if you're asking me impact, it had to be Nakobe Dean. He's going to be out there for every snap. I guess Reed Blankenship was going to be out there for every snap, but I think the linebacker is more important in the scheme. Impact, probably Jalen Carter. I think Nakobe has the ability to make splash plays. I think it's going to be up and down for him a little bit, but that's,
But do you think Carter hits the ground running a little bit more than anybody else that is most ready to, I guess, to play right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to look that position. Typically, you don't step into the NFL and all of a sudden make an impact. It's tough,
right?
Just because of you're going up against these massive but athletically freakish interior linemen, and the same goes for edge guys. So I bring Nolan Smith in this conversation as well. It's probably going to be harder for him. He's got to get that NFL body a little more. He's obviously on the smaller side. He's looked good, explosive out there. You see the obvious talent that he has and why the Eagles were able to, why the Eagles drafted him in the first round. But Jalen Carter, I mean, he's already kind of there physically and size and athleticism. And look, he's going to have his ups and downs. He's going to have games where they're going to double team him, and all of a sudden, he doesn't do much of anything. But I think it's fair to say that when it's all said and done this season, he could be in the mix for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So he would probably be my answer.
Okay.
All right, Jeff, so you've been there every day training camp. You've seen all 3 preseason games. As we sit here today on the Tuesday before the Eagles season officially gets underway, what's your number one storyline in terms of what you're watching for or want to see in this first game?
Well, I guess we touched a little bit on the size scheme. That would be my number one. But since we went over that, I guess number 2 is just I want to see how they use Jalen Hurts in the run game.
Okay.
I think it's still going to be the +1 factor is still going to be very much a part of this offense. It's a huge part of the offense last year. Zone reads in terms of how it opened up things for the other running backs and for Jalen to take advantage of. RPRs, our run pass whatever options, plays that are going to be a part of this offense as well. But, obviously, Nick has, whenever he's been asked this question, he says, just because Jalen Hurts was on a rookie contract doesn't mean I was exposing him more to contact than I would now that he signed the contract extension, the franchise quarterback contract extension. But it's something they have to consider. And it's something that I think they're going to have to be prepared for too, because I think teams are going to find ways to take that away. There are ways to take that away. And, Todd Bowles did it in the playoff game 2 years ago, forced the Eagles to throw. Of course, Jalen Hurts showed by year 3 that, he can carry the offensive load on his arm if need be. That being said, that is still an important component of the offense. And again, you just don't want to expose him to harm more than you need to. Yes, run him a few times, run those zone reads, give him the option here and there, take off. The draw plays, as productive as they were, and basically that won them the game in Indianapolis last year and was a factor in the Super Bowl. I mean, they were like running power left, power right with Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl because he was the best athlete on the field and the Chiefs couldn't stop him. And I mean, but do you really want to do that a lot and then expose him to potential harm, and then all of a sudden he's out for an extended period or whatever? No. So I'm interested to see how that will play out.
Jeff, how would you compare and contrast his camp this year from say last year, Jalen? Better,
Exactly.
Worse, the same? Yeah.
He got off to a rocky start early in camp last year. And then he kind of got in a groove, and you could see what we end up seeing. But again, it's tough to see. They didn't play. He only played, I think, 1 drive.
Yeah, the Jets series. Yep.
Yeah. And then, for instance, there was they had the 1 joint practice with the Dolphins, supposed to be 2. Dolphins had to cancel the second one for a reason. But there were a bunch of reporters down there from Philadelphia who watched it, and Jalen was kind of checking down a fair amount on a lot of the drives. And a few of them had written, because Tua was throwing it downfield on the Eagles defense that day. Who knows what they were working on? Maybe there's a reason why. And then we end up seeing that Tua, they had a big play offense. It was understandable. Plus, you got Tyreek Hill and you got Jalen Waddle. So there was a comparison being made And it's like, oh, Jalen, didn't look okay, whatever, And then Nick was asked about the next day. Nick's like, and again, we don't have the luxury of film, and that's why when I do the practice observations, I always couch it with, or it seems like this, because you don't. And even when you see it live, or even when you watch it again, sometimes you don't even know. And Nick was like, no, he did the right thing here. They played a cover 2. That play was dead. He took the check down where he needed to. And so you saw Jalen and how he was just willing to kind of do that, and knew when to go down and when not to go down. And that's what we saw play out the season. This year, obviously almost from the get-go, it was just like Jalen was making the right throw almost every time. Now there were certainly a couple practices where he threw an interception here and there. I think he had an interception in the joint practice with the Browns. That first practice with them, it wasn't great. Now the offensive line got beat up. Jordan Mailata had no answer for Myles Garrett, so that factored a lot into with Jalen, how he had done as well. But I thought overall, yes, I think Jalen, just see him just taking another step in terms of his comfort. I think it's going to be harder for him. It's possible he regresses statistically this year. I don't think it's going to be a major drop off, but it's possible he does do that. But I think in the bigger picture, sometimes you got to take one step back to take a step forward or 2 steps forward. I think that could be this type of year for Jalen Hurts.
Jeff, tell me if you agree or disagree with this. The Eagles will be one of the top 4 running teams in the National Football League, but they won't have a 1,000-yard individual rusher because of the depth and versatility in that backfield.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, we've seen now in 2 years under Nick Sirianni, they've had one of the best, or if you take those 2 years and put them together, the best rushing offense.
Yeah.
In the NFL. Jeff Stoutland has a huge hand in that. And certainly Jalen Hurts, as we talked about, is a huge part of that as well. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see how much they can kind of balance that with having him involved in the run game and not having him involved in the run game. And of course, you can't mention the Eagles run game without mentioning their offensive line, one of the best in the league. Just like maulers in the run game in terms of Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata on that left side. Obviously Lane Johnson on the right side. Well, pass protection is more his MO. He's good at run blocking, but he's pass protection is what he's the best at. Jason Kelce, of course. So, and then Cam Jurgens you bring in there, and I think he's a pretty good run blocker. So that's going to give him that. In terms of answering your question, I mean, I think DeAndre Swift will probably be the guy who gets the most snaps per game. A lot has to do with the fact that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. But Miles Sanders got 1,000 plus yards last year, right?
Yeah.
I think, you got Rashad Penny. A lot of it's going to depend on his health. And I think Kenny Gainwell, you'll see a little more of him in the run game this year. I think it's interesting with him is that, the Eagles, when they drafted him, are like, oh, we see him as Naheem Hines out of the backfield, catching the pass. That really hasn't been how it's played out with him. You're going to see more of Swift in that role. But I think Kenny can run the ball. And I think you'll probably see have games where maybe he goes over 100 yards. I think it's going to be sprinkled around. It's going to be a by-committee approach.
Jeff, I know you went down to Mississippi and kind of got a feel for A.J. Brown and, where he's from, upbringing, all that kind of stuff. Give us some takeaways, man. Some of the things that you learned, and people can check that out, obviously, inquirer.com, and you can link up to that on your Twitter handle as well.
Yeah, make sure you take out a little time because it's a long story. But, I really want the idea of going down there, and I asked JJ right after the Eagles traded for him, hey, can I come down and meet your people, go to your hometown, this, that, and the other thing? And he's like, I don't want to do that yet. I want to kind of deliver. And I got the message was delivered to me from Eagles people that like he wanted to kind of deliver upon the $100 million contract, all the collateral, all the draft picks they gave up to move up for him. And then I kind of went back to him again after this offseason. I'm like, hey, you don't have that excuse anymore. You delivered this year, obviously. Yeah. Best numbers the Eagles have had from a receiver since Terrell Owens in 2004. And I said, okay. I saw that he was having a camp for youths in Oxford, which is where Ole Miss is. And I said, hey, maybe I'll come down for that. Maybe I also hit down Starkville. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. You can meet all my family and go this, that, or the other thing. He had another camp the next day in Starkville. So actually I started in Starkville, went to Oxford, and then went back to Starkville the next day to get AJ individually and talk to obviously teachers, coaches, his parents, his sisters, friends of his, the local bartender, barber that used to cut his hair. to get a sense of what AJ is all about and how Starkville made him. And, AJ has been very open about his mental health issues, and a couple of years admitted that he had thoughts of suicide, and he had struggled with depression in 2020 when he was injured a lot. I think that factored into it. There were other personal things as well that he's kept private and that I've respected. It was good to hear from his family about that. And also just to kind of peel back the layer on, we see him as kind of, sometimes someone said this to me at first, and I didn't see it because I've been around him enough to know in the locker room how he is. And I've heard him around him, but people are like, oh, well, we see on the field is this like outwardly brash guy and, whipping the goalposts and, the one time pointing to the defenders after he beats them. And he's not that person off the field. He's a very introspective, almost introverted person, very subdued, very thoughtful, maybe not quick to kind of open himself to people. I think that comes from the trust factor. His parents had divorced when he was 13. That had a very significant impact on him in his life. His dad was a very important part of his life, and as was his mother. And he ended up choosing to live with his father, who was like kind of like his they were like sports guys. I mean, he was his guidance in terms of
mentor,
baseball, mentored him in baseball, and then obviously went along for the ride in football. So there's a lot there to digest, and I just wanted to kind of get inside AJ and really bring to people in Philadelphia who don't really know much more about him than just the fact that he is an unbelievable wide receiver.
Yeah, first of all, Jeff, kudos for going to Mississippi in the summer, because my dad's from Mississippi. I've been to Columbus and Starkville. That humidity ain't no joke down there, brother. First of all,
I love the South. The food, the bourbon,
the hospitality.
I'd stopped in Tupelo to see Elvis's birthplace.
Yeah.
Then there's a famous Johnny Cash song where he got caught for urinating publicly about Starkville. I went to that spot.
Yeah.
Then I stayed in Memphis and went to obviously Beale Street and all the little juke joints. And so I'm a big music guy, and I love all that country, rock, soul, all of it. So anyway, just to get you it wasn't like it was mostly work, but there was a little bit of play down there too.
There you go,
man. Did you come away in any way, shape, or form? Because when a player comes into town, we in the media, we find out as much as we can about them, and we think we have a grasp on who they are, what they are. Was there any one thing that really stood out, shocked you about your research and your interaction with people who really knew AJ?
Yeah. And again, I don't claim to know him, this is like the thing that, as you do this job more and more, you realize that you don't know these guys ultimately, even when you do features and meet all their family. It's just, it's just a little more of a play on this, the fact that how he just doesn't really seek the spotlight.
Yeah.
This one feature told a story about how this is after he became a pro. It made tons of money, and they walked outside. She's the first person he'd always go see when he came back to Starkville High and give her a big hug. And one time they were walking outside. She's walking him out. I'll walk you out to her car. And she's like, AJ, where are you? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm over there. And it was a Toyota Camry. And he's like, I get in town easier this way. And he doesn't have airs about him. He really doesn't. He's a deep guy, very spiritual. And his mom was telling me stories about how every day, they go over there eating, she'll just see his Bible's always open up on the table, but he doesn't really advertise it at all. It's just something that's very personal to him. Again, I like him. So I just got a sense that AJ, I just felt like there's something a little more there. Mm-hmm. There's a little more depth there. There's a little more drama there than maybe you'd think. But also I wanted to do it and bring this shine of light on someone who deserves it ultimately.
Makes sense. Jeff, we know you got to run. Appreciate you giving us a couple minutes, man. Looking forward to chatting with you as we always do during the season. You can follow Jeff on Twitter/X at Jeff_McLane, of course, Inquirer.com as well. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Have a good day, man.
All right. Take care. That's Jeff McLane from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Yeah, it's a really good piece. I would suggest everybody get a chance to check it out. Let me throw this at you, man. Nick Sirianni. Yeah. And I said this to you before. I'm surprised how little we talk about him. We focus on the quarterback naturally. The guy's a dynamic player and an unbelievable person. we focus on some of the defensive players and some of the other stuff. We don't talk a lot about a guy who in 2 years here got him to the playoffs after winning 4 games the previous season and got him to a Super Bowl within 3 points of winning the whole thing, who's also sort of a dynamic character whereas it would normally get a lot of play. Why is it we don't talk about him more? And I don't just mean you and I mean media in general, it feels like.
Because even though he should get more credit for orchestrating the whole thing, his players overshadowed him by their accomplishments.
Yeah.
A defense with 70 sacks, 4 defensive players, double-digit sacks, 2 wide receivers, 1,000-yard receiver, a quarterback who became this lightning rod who was second in the voting in the MVP. The fact that the team, with all those accomplishments, went to a Super Bowl. All of that stuff kind of overshadowed the guy who put it all together, who pulls the strings. Mm-hmm. And I've thought about that often. Usually it's a coach who gets a lot of the accolades, whether it's an Andy Reid, a Bill Belichick. But if you think about it, Andy Reid, for as long as he's been in the NFL, he's overshadowed by that guy named Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Bill Belichick, I would say, was equal with Brady in a lot of ways because Belichick was so arrogant in his way he approached the media, and people gravitated towards it and took their shots when they could because he wouldn't tell you anything, but he had arguably the greatest quarterback in the history of the game.
Yeah.
See, but here, there's so many different components that overshadowed him that he took, and willingly, he took a back seat to all the accolades. I don't think Nick Sirianni cares one iota if he gets individual accolades. As long as his team continues to win and he continues to put them in a position to compete for a Super Bowl, he's just fine with everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. It's like GM, quarterback, and then maybe some other players on the team. And then we get to Sirianni, which is it's rare in this town. And a lot of that, you're right. Let me put it this way. If they were losing, Eagles lose the game. Eagles lose to the Patriots in the opener, you're going to hear Nick Sirianni's name a lot more. Now you're winning. It's kind of like an offensive lineman or a referee. It's like, all right, everything's good. Keep going. Keep doing whatever you're doing, man. But yeah, I always find that a little bit interesting. Like we talk about the assistant coaches, the coordinators a lot more. Sure. Jeff Stoutland, even probably how often does an offensive line coach get spoken about more than the head coach does? Not often.
Not often. No.
Yeah.
But Stoutland is such a fascinating character, and he's so well respected for what he's done consistently year in and year out. Think about his tenure that he's been here in Philadelphia and what he's done with young offensive linemen as well as veterans to getting them to believe in his system. And then it evolves into Stoutland University. Yeah. And basically that's what it is. Because for whatever reason, he gets things out of offensive linemen, whether young or old, that other offensive line coaches don't consistently do.
Yeah.
He makes his players versatile. He makes them better technicians, quicker off the snap, more cohesive as a unit. Whatever little tricks that he has, they're second to none across the board in the National Football League.
Yeah, and that's another area. I was talking about earlier how you don't have to worry about Lane Johnson and all. I feel like you just don't have to worry about the offensive line. Like, yeah, are we curious to see what Cam Jurgens is going to look like? Sure we are. But I feel like that unit, you don't sweat it, man. They stay healthy, you don't sweat it. They don't have the depth that they've had in years past. But whomever they throw in there is going to be coached up very well by the dude who's doing the coaching. That's for sure. And I think he also is intricate in the running game. Like he does a lot of different things. It's not just, just an offensive line coach shows guys how to block. He does a lot of things for this team.
And you can tell he's very comfortable in his role. He has no aspirations of being a head coach. He's very well paid for what he does. Yep. Could he make a lot more money if he has success as a head coach in the NFL? Sure. He doesn't care about that. He's playing to his strength, which is teaching young guys how to block better in the National Football League.
Yeah.
And then the Eagles added on to his role. He became run game coordinator. Why wouldn't you make him the run game coordinator? Because his offensive line makes that run game go so well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Andy was very lucky and that Jim Johnson didn't have aspirations to be a head coach.
No.
And the Eagles have been very lucky that Stoutland is very comfortable without the spotlight on him of being a head coach. It's a great advantage, because he very easily could either be a head coach right now, Derek, or an offensive coordinator or something else, and not here. So that's a big piece of this thing. All right, let's get a timeout, and we will we'll dive headlong into our NFL segment. Among the things we will get into, couple of key guys still holding out. Cooper Kupp seeing a specialist. I'll tell you, the Jets are writing some checks that I don't know that their rear ends are going to be able to cash. So we'll get into that too. Some injury issues for the Cowboys. I'm shedding tears there. And we'll a longtime NFL grizzled veteran reporter is stepping down. So we'll get into all those kind of things when we come back. Don't go anywhere. He's Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Flynn Tree Services. Yes, Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They offer cost-effective solutions to any tree problem that you may face. They are experts trimming all types of trees, and they serve southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, as well as northern Delaware. You could go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call at 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flynntreeservices.com. That's flynntreeservices.com.